I don't know about you, but when we got to that song and she started right out singing, God is, everything in me went, no! Because even after all these years in this teaching, I still have a negative reaction sometimes to that word God, the G word, because it has been so misused and abused over the years, and people have used it, G word, to attempt to abuse and control and manipulate one another. That often I try not to use it too much because I don't want people to think we're talking about that old God that was used in that way. Because God is a word that is means something different to everyone. It's so many different meanings. And today we're going to talk about what it is and what it isn't from our perspective, and then why it matters and what to do about it. So that's kind of the outline. Hopefully I'll get somewhere close to that. But today it's about what is this G word? What is this God thing? And why does it stir up so much stuff in us? I don't know about you, but I grew up with the belief that God was a personality, that it was a person of some sort, that was a deity that was bigger than me. It lived in the universe somewhere. I didn't really believe it was a God up there somewhere because I'd already had enough science as a kid to go, oh no, it can't, there's no up. I mean, on a round planet flying through space, which way is up? So that didn't work for me. What did work for me, though, was that it was a moral God. And I grew up in a tradition that said it believed in the priesthood of the believer, that every believer had the right to choose their beliefs, to look at everything that was going on and what they were being taught, and choose what was true and what was not true for them. And that was a really powerful place to start, even though it was filled with a lot of shoulds and oughts and things that I was supposed to believe if I wanted to be a good boy. And I really wanted to be a good boy, then more so than now. So that God thing just really, really became a big part of my life. My father passed away when I was very young. I was 7 and he was 30, and he got saved just before. This God thing suddenly came into his life and became very important. And what I heard after he passed away was, well, first of all, I saw the huge change in him when that happened. His behavior changed. So much changed in the way he treated us and the way he experienced life. He was so sad before that, and he was so free after that, it was just a different world. So this God thing got my attention at that point. I was only 7. Then when he passed away and they told me he'd gone to be with God, I thought, well, there's more to it than that. I need to be a really good boy so I can get to go there too, wherever there was. So I spent my life with that. But the whole point of that is simply that we all form our ideas of God by our very earliest experiences with power. And that's what the human race has done. We started out experiencing power, and how do we experience power, and what sense do we make of it? So historically, through the ages, humans have done that. We started out seeing the sun as power. The sun and the moon were the great powers in the sky, and they brought energy and light and life. And there are pyramids and all sorts of things all over the world to measure the sun, to make sure that we get past the solstice and the sun comes back. It doesn't just continue to go away. By the time that much of the Bible was written, the belief was that this universe, that the gods lived above the sky and below the waters, and that we were in betweens people. And to know God, you had to understand that through these holes in the sky, light was shining in, and that's where the light of God was coming from. It was the sun, it was the moon, it were the stars, all of those things. So all of that kind of blends together in the development of human consciousness, because that's what matters. It's where is your consciousness and my consciousness as we understand this thing called God. And that we keep these, or that we question our gut reactions about it. And as I question mine every day, every time I hear it, I thought I was all over it until I just heard that song right then. I'm like, ooh, God. But that's a God that was about a personality who made choices, decisions. Sometimes it would hand out blessings and good things, and sometimes it would hand out not so good things, but there was never any clear understanding for my part of what made the difference. If you behaved good enough, maybe you got the good stuff. But then I also saw people I didn't think were behaving very well, getting all the good stuff, or a lot of the good stuff. And then I heard, well, when you get to heaven, that'll all be balanced out. Because in this life, you're not going to have it that way, but when you get to heaven, the bad guys will lose and the good guys will win. Well, that didn't last but too long. But the whole point of this is the idea that the power of God, the power of this G word, God, is outside of us. When I got into a 12-step program, I learned I had already thrown all ideas of God out at that point, but I had to have some kind of idea. So what I heard was good, orderly direction, G-O-D. I adopted that for a while. That really worked well for me. This idea of oneness, though, took a little longer. I remember in that period of the G-O-D, the good, orderly direction, I was in my backyard in a hammock, just rocking, enjoying the afternoon. It was hot. That was the coolest place other than the air conditioning, and I didn't want to be in air conditioning right then. So I'm rocking, I'm looking up at the trees, and I'm thinking, and this idea hit me. Every time I breathe out, a tree breathes in. Every time I release something comes back to me. So there's a circuit, there's a flow. Not only so maybe this oneness idea is about oneness within the natural world, which I studied a lot about. I started as a science major. So I did all that science stuff before I got into this philosophical work. And I went, wow, that turned a corner for me. That opened something up new in me. That all of my study about environments and how we are interconnected, it's really a study of oneness and how this all works together from one power, one energy, one place. And then the transformation came along further and further until I began to really adopt what we now teach, and what I now teach as part of the science of mind, as a teacher of science of mind, this idea of oneness. I thought about in your treatment, you said something to the effect, and forgive me for not quoting you right, but that we can choose to manifest prosperity. We can choose to manifest health. We can choose to bring into our lives more of peace, more of all of these things. Well, how do we do that? What are we doing that with? We're doing that with our minds, right? So the mind must be the link somewhere in all of this. That was my stepping stone. So this power of one started to grow in me whenever I was looking for and trying to understand religions. I was in a master or doctoral program, and I was looking at religions and why they were useful to people and how they were culturally developed and all of those things. And yet I kept thinking there's something underneath and below and behind that they're all trying to get to, but nobody seems to be expressing it. And then I walked into the Atlanta Church of Religious Science, and I heard them talk about oneness. Well, that sounds like what they're after. And then I heard there's a whole philosophy that's been around for eons that has been right there. At that time, there was not a single book in the Emory University library about an idea of oneness or a philosophy of oneness. There was nothing about New Thought. There was nothing about Ernest Holmes or these teachings that have been around for 200 years at least and more, if you look really deep into the other teachings. And I went, wow. But so I started reading, I started absorbing it all as fast as I could, and it just made so much sense. And I realized this thing I was trying to write as my doctoral dissertation had already been written. And yet it wasn't recognized by my academic world. So I couldn't use it in my doc, which is why I didn't finish the doctorate to this day. I still have an ABD, all but the dissertation, and that's great, and I'm happy for that. But the idea here, I want to come back to, is that this idea of one power was so seminal and so important to me, Because in the world, if you look around in our world of our five senses, touch, taste, smell, see, sight, there's a lot of powers at work here. There's warring, there's people against each other, there's my wonderful healthy body that also surprises me sometimes and goes, oh no, not so much in that department. All these other conflicting things, and I just couldn't make sense of it to begin with, and it still takes some work with some of it to make sense. But it got to make sense, because if oneness is not true and real in one everywhere, it's not true and real anywhere. So one power in one place at one time, always, everywhere, everything. So what are the qualities of this one power we talk about? This, our idea of the G word. The qualities of this are those qualities that you referred to. It's the qualities of love. It's the quality of light. It's the quality of peace. It's the quality of beauty. Beauty is a fascinating thing. We don't talk much about it anymore. Philosophers of the last century spent a lot of time on it. It's not the thing you're looking at. It's your experience of looking at it. It's where the beauty is. That's a consciousness piece. All of those qualities of the infinite are qualities within us that are the infinite ultimate thing. Prosperity, givingness, creativity, all of that are the connections and the qualities of the universe. Now, what it does do, and I love the other part of the quote you read that says it's not personal. And this oneness does not operate to make anyone special. I like that, except when I'm feeling special. And then I'm like, what do you mean it's not special? I'm special. I got the numbers. I got all the letters behind my name. I got travel behind me. I got all this good stuff. What do you mean I'm not special? Pardon? I got my many coat of many colors on that a member made for me in such wonderful. I'm so grateful for. She painted it. Maybe I'm not special. Well, of course you're not, in the sense that this oneness works the same way in me that it works in every other person, from all of us sitting here to the person that's living on the street and doing the best they can to get by. We're all part of that one power. And the only difference is some of us have learned how to use it, and some of us haven't. And we'll get to that. What we've learned to do is figure out ways in which we can channel through us, not in the sense of going into another mind and body, but channeling in the sense of it just is the natural stuff. When you're thinking, the oneness is all there is. The one power is all there is. So the power that fires your thoughts, the power that makes your brain work, the power that makes your body work, the energy that runs through our systems throughout, the energy that runs all of this, is all created of, is part of that one energetic power, that one universal something. Now, we can't define it all. It's infinite. We are in the process now of defining it as much as we can by our lives and by our understanding. It's fascinating. The opening part of the Science of Mind textbook, which was written in 1926 originally and then later revised in 1935, says that someday science and religion are going to finally get together and realize that we're all talking about the same thing in the same way. Well, hello, we're there. Quantum physics points clearly to the idea of only one power behind everything. That this universe, this known universe, is a collection of energy and information concentrated in special points and pods all around. You and I are simply points of energy and information. Deepak Chopra really took that idea forward, and others who've looked at and talked about quantum physics and string theory and all of those things, which point to the idea that it's all energy, it's all universal consciousness. And it's interesting because even the quantum physicists now are talking about consciousness as the final, ultimate bottom line. Once they go past the string theory and the this theory and the that theory, they get down to what's the base, what does it all bubble up from? It all bubbles up out of it as part of universal consciousness. That's the thing itself. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that this thing right here is not solid. It looks solid. If I drop it on my toe, it will definitely feel solid. If I stumble around and against it, it will. We loaded it in and out of the truck today, and it was like, I didn't. We didn't. Jake did. And it felt pretty solid when he picked it up and carried it. It didn't look as solid when he carries it as when I try to carry it. But still, it's solid. But it's not. You've got to, seventh grade science teaches you that it's a collection of molecules and energy, and there's far more space in there than there is anything solid. Where you go below and beyond that, what's behind that? Consciousness. So when consciousness is at work, God is at work, Spirit is at work, life is at work, and it's working as the only thing it can do, and then it takes all sorts of shapes and forms, which means we can create new, exciting, wonderful shapes and forms. I got a real sense of urgency to go, and here's an example of how we use it. I'm going back out west. I've been invited to join some friends at our new retreat center, Cedar Ridge, Camp Cedar Ridge, that CSL recently bought, and is this wonderful, beautiful space. Some of my friends were going to gather there for just an impromptu retreat. And they called and said, "You better come." Well, that's Seattle. That's all the way on the other side of the planet. No, just the other side of the country. And I was not in a real good place to just fork out the dollars. So I started looking around. It was late. Flights were $1,200, $1,300. I'm like, oh, no, we're not doing that. Kept treating about it. If this is for me, it'll come. Woke up one night about right at 12 o'clock. I'd been asleep a couple of hours. Just wide awake. Got to check flights. What? I'm sleepy. Okay, get my phone out. Check the flights. And the same flight I'd been looking at for $1,200 was $360 that day. That night. I booked it. It went back up the next day. Why it was like that day? Well, So I got to go. And I got to go easily and freely and well, and it was well taken care of, and all that was in space. Now, that's a prosperity consciousness piece. That's all about, if it's for me, if this is really to my highest and greatest good, then it will be provided. And that has been my experience my whole life, really, even before this teaching, but definitely since getting into this teaching, when I learned how to take that one power and use it by providing mold, not mold like it grows on the walls, but molds like a mold you would pour something into. I create a mold in my consciousness that allows me then to receive stuff. Now I'm getting way ahead because that's the talk for 2 weeks from now or next week or whatever. Right now we want to stay focused on what is this thing itself right here and right now. Now here's the question. Why does it matter what you believe about God? It is my personal belief, and has been my whole life really, that whatever you believe about ultimate power, whether you call that God or science or natural laws or whatever it might be, whatever you believe about that shapes the rest of your decisions. Because if you believe that ultimate power is dual and dualistic, then everything you do is going to be about making sure the bad guys don't win and the good guys do, if you're one of those guys, whichever way you see yourself. Your decisions about everything in life are going to be based on either a defensive posture against the evil or a positive posture also against the evil and for the good. But always the evil is going to be playing that off with you. Now, we live in a world that plays that big, right? I mean, TV, all you got to do is watch a little news and you hear the fear-mongering that goes on, the terrifying things that are out there on YouTube, on everywhere. If you read it too much, you could go, oh my gosh, we're all going down the toilet. Well, I'm not, and I haven't for a long time. So I assume, again, we go back to what is the basic belief? Do I believe that I'm in a world that could be destroyed by evil forces that are beyond my control, that are supernatural? One of the things I like most about this teaching is that we do not believe in a supernatural beyond the natural. Now, that may be a little tough for people. Maybe God, this is all there is. Yeah, at this moment. God itself is everything you see and beyond, but the beyond is simply the natural that we don't yet understand. Magic. Think about magic, the things you see that were magic, and you go, oh, wow, that's magic. That's wonderful. They must be supernatural. No. Magic today is tomorrow's science. If people 1,000 years ago had seen anybody flying in and out of Jerusalem in a jet plane, they would have said, that is magic. There's nothing holding it up. It's just flying. Well, yeah, there is. Now we know what it is. We know where we know where the places are, how it works, and what makes it work. So tomorrow's magic is simply not yet understood science. Today's magic is that. So as we think of the future, we think, I don't know how this is going to happen. If you can envision it happening, you don't have to know how it happens. You just have to know that my imagination tells me this can really be true and real for me. I can have what I want. I can be what I want. And if I believe I live in a universe of oneness where there's nothing opposing that on the ultimate level, then that could happen. The only limitation is my own imagination and consciousness and willingness to take action. That's the other part we sometimes forget. These things don't happen. I had to make a phone call to get the cheaper fare. That didn't just somehow land in my bank account. I had to do it. You have to take the action that comes when you understand the process and the feeling. So it matters. The difference it makes in our lives is that we can move out of fear into freedom. It is our basic birthright. It is our basic starting place. That's also in the very first few chapters of the textbook that says, and by the textbook I mean Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes. Talks about that freedom is our natural way to be. That's why we have this drive toward it. No matter what may be attempting we see us pushing back against it, there's that within us that wants free. Free to go, free to stay, free to love, free to live, free to be who we know ourselves most fully to be. That's a great, powerful difference for us. Knowing this oneness means I don't have to be afraid of the evil spirits. A few years ago, they did a study about what the TV people and the movies people did this big study about what are folks wanting in movies. And the big thing that came out of that was they were wanting more spiritual content. So now we have more spiritual content. And that spiritual content is always about the evil spirit that's coming after you, or the bad juju that's going to get you, or the superhero that's going to win, or the anti-heroes of the superpowers that are going to win. All that duality, it's all about two-ness. I've seen very few movies about oneness. There are a few. One of my favorites is The Last Holiday, I think is the title of it. And where the woman thinks she's dying, and so she goes on vacation and lives out her wish book that she'd been accomplishing for years and putting together for years. And it's just such a rich and fun and beautiful movie, including her estranged boyfriend coming and weathering the Alps snow and ice to get to her just while she's up on the roof. Anyway, it's a long story. You'll watch it, or you won't. There are stories that have that out there, but they're rare. So you and I get to rewrite our stories. We get to rewrite that story of fear, of lack, of limitation, of unhealth. And, health is a whole nother topic we're going to go into in February. But right now, we're just going to stay back with this one power. So know that this is how it is. If you choose to believe in it, if you choose to create beliefs in that idea, then things will come to you to start showing it to you. It's like looking for the car that you were always thinking you wanted, and then suddenly they're showing up everywhere. I'm seeing Teslas everywhere. And I'm not yet sure how I'm going to finance that, but I'm seeing Teslas everywhere, including out here. Thank you, Rick and Lynn. Because to me, that's kind of the next idea of, the next idea of what a what the car industry is going to be about. So Vance is standing over here, which is letting me know that I need to wrap this up, and I will. I themed our affirmation for this week, and I invite you to use it and then watch for what happens in your life. And the affirmation is, God is all there is. It means you got to get clear about what you mean by God and the all, and what the connection between the two happen to be for you. So I encourage you to work with that, to play with it, to write it, to think about it, and come back next week and we'll take the next part. In fact, I will not be here. I will be on another retreat. And the wonderful Reverend Angela, who's sitting back here, will be speaking to you next week. And we will continue right here, same channel, same place, same good vibes. Thank you. You're wonderful. So am I. So it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Awesome talk. Back in person in January. So for those of you online, come join us.